Hello everyone, welcome to the Your Mark on the World show. Today's show is being produced for yourmarkontheworld.com, and we have a great guest today from Washington, D.C. We have Ryan Ross, who's the program manager at Halcyon Incubator. Ryan, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Devin.
Well, we're really glad that you would take the time to do this. Your program sounds amazing. You've got a social enterprise, social entrepreneur-focused incubator. In some ways, I think of Y Combinator and some of the other successful, we've got one here in Salt Lake City called Boom Startup, but they're incubators typically designed to support and grow and foster tech entrepreneurs, and they usually take an equity stake. It's a little bit, those are great programs, helping to grow the economy, create exciting products for all of us, but you have a different focus. Tell us about your focus.
So our focus is, we started from a place of focusing on social impact. And when you start with social impact, you recognize that a few things that are core to the traditional incubator model don't necessarily port over well. So for instance, the equity part. How do you take equity from a nonprofit? There are a few kind of components to this that don't mesh up as well. And then you know, when you're beginning, I think, any of these programs, as I'm sure Y Combinator did, and any of these just fantastic incubators and accelerators, you have to think about what is your end goal. And the Halcyon Incubator is a program of the SNR Foundation, whose purpose is to support talented entrepreneurs. And when you're focusing on how can we support these talented entrepreneurs, how can we focus on social impact, very quickly realize that some of the things have to change. So for instance, we don't take equity from the people and the entrepreneurs that come into our program. It costs nothing for them to actually join the program, and we provide a lot of in-kind support, both through the residency portion, through an extended timeline, which mitigates overhead for 14 months during the program, free workspace, and a stipend. So we want to make sure that our focus is on social impact, and to do that, we wanted to make sure, A, that we had the ability to open this program up to anyone from any background, because we want the best ideas that are focused on solving these critical 21st century problems. So it's a little bit of a spin on the traditional take, but when you're focusing on social entrepreneurs and when you're focusing on both for-profit and nonprofit models, you have to be flexible.
Well, you do, and it's interesting that you've taken an approach where you are, as you say, agnostic between for-profit and nonprofit. What are you seeing in your first class? What's the mix of for-profit and nonprofit?
Well, in the first class, I think we have a little bit more for-profit than nonprofit, but I expect that to ebb and flow. Our sample size is a little bit smaller, given that we have just one class currently in the program. But the focus, I think, is, and maybe one of the more interesting findings that we could see from the first pool of applicants, is that there are actually a lot of ventures who are not for-profit or nonprofit. They're at a stage where they're just focused on social impact and trying to figure out how they can best leverage that. Is it through a for-profit model, a nonprofit model, or frankly something in between? And that is a question that we hope to help a lot of our entrepreneurs with when they come through the program.
Can you give us some examples of the companies or the entrepreneurs and their ideas, their programs that are coming through the program now?
Absolutely. So one example is Ari Raz, whose company is called Pure Joy, and they're focused on providing organic, nutritious baby food for low-income families that normally can't afford it, trying to see that as a right and not necessarily a privilege. We have another very talented entrepreneur, Diana Sierra, who's providing sustainable menstrual management products for young women in the developing world. We have another individual, Heather Sewell, who's focused on creating a cross-cultural education technology platform that allows students to create their own newspapers online and then to share those stories with people halfway across the world. So the diversity that we had seen in our first class, just in the ideas, was really inspiring, and I think is one of the things that that has brought a lot of partners and people to the program, because they see that there's not just one social challenge that we're facing. There are a myriad of them, and we're hoping that that diversity really benefits the fellows in the program as well.
It's a great program. Let's talk a little bit more about that program per se. It's 3 stages of program. Walk us through, if you would, again, what happens in each stage of the program?
Absolutely. So the program itself is 14 months. Again, it's a little bit longer than most incubators or accelerators, but in many ways the challenges of creating a double bottom line venture require a little bit more extra time in the oven, if you will. The first stage of that is the residency. So we have an historic home in Georgetown in Washington, D.C. that's been repurposed to actually house these social entrepreneurs. So they're going to come in and live in the house for the first 4 months and work there in the workspace to help build and create their ventures. The next 4 months is the post-residency phase, and they move out of the house to make room for the next set of fellows coming in, but they continue to work out of the house and continue to access the resources of the program. And the final phase, the last 6 months, is what we call the incentivized phase, where they work for free and then reduced rent out of a WeWork location in Washington, D.C. So again, it's mitigating the overhead for up to 14 months total to make sure that those costs of starting a startup don't overwhelm the entrepreneurs, so they have the time and ability to take the risks necessary to be successful in their ventures.
It sounds like a wonderful program. Where does the money for this program come from?
So the S&R Foundation, it is the parent of this, and so the S&R Foundation focuses on supporting talented individuals in the arts, sciences, and social entrepreneurship. And it's in that last vertical where we get our funding. We're also creating partnerships with companies and municipalities throughout the region to make sure that this is not just one organization working on this, but it's actually a community-wide effort to help grow and scale these really amazing ventures that the social entrepreneurs have.
So who are the people that are leading the Halcyon Incubator with you? Tell us a little bit about the team.
Sure. So I'm the program manager, so I am developing the program, as it were. We're also supported by Kate Goodall, who is the Chief Operating Officer of S&R Foundation, and she's played a critical role in actually building out the framework of the program. And of course, the vision and many of the details of all this have been laid by Dr. Sachiko Kuno, who is the head of S&R Foundation, and herself is an entrepreneur who has been very successful and has seen what it takes to grow, build, and scale an organization that's focused both on creating a bottom line focused on profit and a bottom line that's also focused on accomplishing a social goal. And so it's a very inspiring team to work with, and we've so far had a lot of traction to be able to get this program up and running. And it starts in just under 2 weeks. We have our first entrepreneurs coming in.
But you're also at this stage collecting applications for your second cohort, is that right?
Absolutely. So the second cohort would start in January. We want to make sure that there's enough time for people to make arrangements, since it is very place-based in Washington, D.C. And that application phase closes on September 18th at 5 o'clock. And so up until that time, you can log on to halcyonincubator.org and apply for the program.
Great. And what is the application process like? It could be intimidating.
It could be, and so we've tried. We actually, in our second application phase, have redone some of the elements to begin streamlining some of the information that we're collecting. But a lot of it, in many ways, is to collect that base of information. This isn't, a test necessarily. We want to know who you are, what your venture is, what your model and idea is. And, a lot of people have asked me, well, what if this isn't perfect? Well, what if this isn't perfect? We're not looking for perfection. If you had the perfect venture, then you probably wouldn't need to come to the program in the first place. The idea is to look at the potential and the ideas, and whether this is an entrepreneur who can actually deliver on that. And we look for those elements in our applications, and once the applications come in, we end up selecting a few to attend what we have, which is a pitch day. It's a virtual pitch day where our selection committee will actually hear the pitches from these companies and to see if these ideas are actually resonating in a way that will achieve both sustainable revenue, whether for-profit or non-profit, but most importantly, to achieve that social impact that's critical to move the needle on these 21st century challenges we face.
Well, terrific. really, Ross, I appreciate the time you've taken here today. Why don't you tell people where to go to learn more, to apply, remind everyone how to connect with you so that they can follow up on this interview.
Absolutely. So the place that you want to go is halcyonincubator.org. I believe it's on the bottom of the screen, but if you're listening to a podcast, that's HALCYON incubator.org. And there you'll be able to not only access information on the program itself and to see the work that we're doing, but also to access the application and apply. And the applications for the second class are due on September 18th at 5 p.m.
Fantastic. Well, again, Ross, thank you very much for being here today. It's been a pleasure to have you.
Thank you very much. It's great being on the show.
All righty. Let's do some good.